Hi, I'm Tom McLoughlin, probably infamous for Friday the 13th, Jason Lives. This week is something that we have a great kindred feeling about, which is fantasy, supernatural versus reality horror.
So what scares you guys? Politics or ghosts, goblins or home invasions, reality versus supernatural? Hello there, everybody. Welcome to the Dungeon of Deadly Delights. I am one of your hosts, Rob DeLaro. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Thank you for the continuous kind words that we're all receiving for the show. I really do appreciate everything. Last week we talked about Final Girls, obviously. Don't want to get too much into it, because, like it could become a massive review. But since we're talking about Final Girls, I do want to mention in the beginning of the show that Grace, played by Samara Weaving of Ready or Not, is definitely tops on the list right now. Like, if you guys have not seen Ready or Not, it is amazing. It really is good. It's a dark comedy, and the great thing about it is, like, you've got your gore aspects and all that stuff, but at the same time, you've got an ending that, like, really is, like, super satisfying, which is very rare to get in a horror film, to get, like an ending that you talk about, like after the movie, like, one of those shocking endings. You know what I mean? It's very rare to get that.
I wouldn't get that from the trailer, though. It didn't feel like it had that kind of vibe about it.
Oh, it definitely does. Yeah. It's a mix between, like, like something like, say, like Most Dangerous Game, which is interesting because, like, familial violence, because she gets married into this, like, family that likes to play games, supposedly, and they're hunting her in a hide and seek, game, like, throughout this mansion or whatever. But if you get political with it, like, say, The Hunt, then you get canceled. It's a very strange thing. Like, one is not okay, and then one is, it's strange. It's a very odd thing. But
when did it come out?
Ready or Not comes out this Friday. So it starts premiering Thursday. I saw a screener for it, and it's definitely one of the best. And like that I've seen in a long time, honestly. Like, as far as a horror comedy is concerned, it really is good. It's excellent. And the interesting thing is, like, Samara Weaving, which is, if I'm not mistaken, it's Hugo Weaving's niece. Like, she's really coming out to the forefront as, like, one of the greatest, like, horror actors there is in our modern time. She's phenomenal. Like, she's done, like, a couple things already, and she's just killing it.
What would you define as a horror actress? That's an interesting statement.
Well, just, she's really stepping into, like, the role of the genre. So, like, she did a Joe Lynch movie. She did this one, Ready or Not. She did, I think she did a featured extra role in Ash vs. Evil Dead when that was on Stars. She's really playing into the genre,
Wasn't she in The Babysitter too?
That's right. She was in The Babysitter too. Yeah, that was.
Which I think I saw where they're coming out with a second one now too.
Yeah. They made the announcement that they were going to do that. I mean, I loved her role in it, but, like, I don't know, man. I have this thing against, like, not against, but, like, I've never really gotten into McG movies. So it's a hard sell for me, that dude. He did, like, Charlie's Angels before and stuff, and he's got his own style. Yeah. It just doesn't really appeal to me too much.
Well, yeah,
great.
Michael Bay quality.
Kind of like that, yeah, like Michael Bay.
Like big images, and lots of energy and lots of action and, you know, stuff going on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, here's the other interesting thing is like, you got something like Ready or Not, which is coming from Fox Searchlight, which is, it's a little, like more independent based side of 20th century.
Yeah.
And that's doing really well. And then supposedly, like, we were talking about at the top of the show, they're saying that It Chapter 2 is like really kind of a mess, which is kind of like, oh no. But the reason why is because, like, this book is a tome. So like even pulling 3 hours of this movie or for this movie is just like, I mean, it's an endeavor. I'm guessing it definitely is an endeavor to pull what works and what doesn't work. And, but the interesting thing is, with that is that they were saying that Bill Hader is the standout of the movie, which doesn't really surprise me. If you guys watch Barry, that dude's awesome. I love Bill Hader. He's like one of my favorites.
They got some great people in that cast.
Yeah. But they're saying like, this is a pre-critical, like this is a critic-proof movie. Let's just face it. Once it comes out, it's going to make tons and tons of fucking money. There's no question about it. Regardless of what the critics say about it.
The critics, there's going to be the comparisons. And I don't even know, did they love the first one that much? I can't recall.
I remember, not to, like, we don't want to get too much into this, but when the first It came out, I think it was the first image of Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. I actually, like, I banked my career on it at the time because I was like, this movie's going to be fantastic because everybody's like, this guy looks horrible. This is going to fucking suck and whatever. I was reading an article from Entertainment Weekly and they were just talking about, like, how they wanted to make him look ancient, like he's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's why he kind of has that, that Marceau look and, like just the frills and all that stuff. And like everything they said made sense to me. And, like obviously people were like on the, Tim Curry wagon. Then they were just like, this sucks, like immediately. And I think it was like the third trailer when that finally came out. That's when people started to warm up to it. But critically, it did really well. The first chapter did really well. Yeah. But and they're not saying it's a bad movie. They're just saying it's kind of a mess considering, they got, you got to sit there for 2 hours and 48 minutes of this movie. But they're saying there's a lot of great things in it. So,
But when you do the second movie, and especially a big studio movie, and I'm of course talking as a director, I mean, there's so many chefs that get involved, and everybody's assistant and secretary, everybody's weighing in. And then, of course, I guess they've probably done a fair amount of previews. And then it's, then everybody's a critic in terms of what they think works and what doesn't. And at a certain point, it starts to get pretty fragmented and you kind of lose originally, the through line. I don't know if that's the problem. I mean, again, I'm just speculating based on what I've seen happen before when you've had a really successful movie and the sequel comes along and, they're trying to make, even more money. So, God forbid there's going to be a third one. I don't know what they would do, but, they'll try to come up with something, a prequel or some damn thing. Who knows?
I don't know. I'm still super excited for it. I'm still going to go see it. It's not going to change a fucking thing.
Of course. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Brittany, you got to go back to the woods this weekend. How did that go?
Yeah, it went good. We wrapped everything at the camp. We got like 4 people completely wrapped.
Yeah.
And we only have like one more block of filming and then we'll be done.
Wow. Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we were talking about it before and like, it's been a long time coming for you to put a cap on this bitch. I mean, it's been a long time.
Not as long as the first one, but yeah, it's been a year for this one since we filmed last, but.
So what, are you taking it to festival like once it's done? Is that what he's planning or like what is he going to do?
I think he's planning to do it or to take it to festivals and release it. So
wow.
I don't know his exact plans though. But yeah.
That's a fascinating move because, Rob Zombie's, releasing 3 from Hell for like a 3-night event for Fathom. And nobody really knows what he's going to do with the movie after that. So if it's going to go directly to VOD or if he's going to, they're kind of speculating. Obviously, that's what's going to happen. But it seems like that's the way to go now odds, like, you know, to do like, you know, your event run or your festival run, and on top of that, like, you know, just put the movie out, you know.
Right, pretty much. I think right now, like, streaming platforms are like the best for indie films. So, at least from other people I've heard, that's where they get the best results, at least.
Well, honestly, it seems like, you know, not to plug them, you know, because they like the show or whatever, but, you know, Shudder seems like the place to go for a lot of independent and art house films. Like, you know, that seems like the place where people could actually discover them if they haven't seen them before. So
yeah, it still pisses me off, but I know it's a new age, and you have to kind of roll with the fact that it costs so much to distribute and have the exhibition of movies. So they tend to go for, you know, the ones that for sure they know they can make X amount of prints and put it out there. And then everybody else, if you go on a low budget, it's like, all right, you've only spent this much. We're not going to spend 3 times that amount to put it in the theater. So we have a theater out here in LA, in Hollywood, called the Arena. And it'll play for like, you know, 1 week there, and then bang, you know, sometimes at the same time, it's already playing, you know, on iTunes or on streaming, on some you know, particular channel. But it just, for me, as a filmmaker, a horror and comedy are the things you want to be in a theater and hear, you know, people react to. You know, I saw Good Boys over the weekend, and I can't tell you how long it's been since I've heard an audience roaring with laughter. I'm back and forth in the seats, and I go, whatever you want to say about the movie, you know, that it's, you know, the little rascals with profanity, you know, you like these boys, they're great, but the main thing was seeing it with a full audience and hearing them roaring and applauding at the end. And I mean, there's nothing like that. And the same thing with horror movies. You just love seeing people go down in their seats and jump up and scream at the screen. And I mean, it's just, you know, I love that stuff.
Well, you know, that's the interesting thing about Seth Rogen, you know, like, you know, not to get too much into him, because, you know, we talked about Mike Flanagan for like 20 minutes the other night, but you know, he's a brilliant guy. You know, the fact that he can make something like The Boys and Preacher, you know, like Let His Freak Flag Fly, and then do something like, you know, like Good Boys. I don't think he's really not had like a hit, as you know what I mean? Like maybe like, you know, one made less money than the other, but like that dude's brilliant. That dude's super fucking brilliant.
Yeah, really funny.
Yeah. So the topic this week, you guys, is an interesting one, and I'm going to let Tommy explain this one because he has a better beat on it. So Tommy, go ahead and let everybody know what we're talking about this week, because this is a really cool topic this week, you guys.
Yeah, this is where you'll love us or hate us, guys. You know, we're going to obviously put out there what we think is scary or what we think is better. You know, but again, it's personal on a certain level. And then it's also, you know, the fact that certain things work commercially and other things that are really intense and scary are sort of, you know, become cultish. You know, it's like, oh, you got to see this thing. You didn't see that? Oh, man, you know, you got to find that movie. Yeah. So there's always those two. So we're going to miss more than we're going to hit. Yeah. But what I thought might be an interesting topic is to basically talk about things that were based on a true story or are things that could happen. I mean, something that, you know, you had brought up The Strangers, you know, as those kinds of movies. I was thinking, you know, Psycho, or, you know, The Hills Have Eyes, or Maniac. You know, it's like this shit could happen, and so you're identifying with it in a completely different way than, say, a fantasy horror where you've got, like, you know, my granddaddy of all is The Exorcist, and you are accepting, you know, because the actors are so good, this world. But when it gets down to it, I mean, we're talking about a girl spinning her head. We're talking about pea soup. We're talking, you know, all the bells and whistles that movie had that are not, you know, logical and realistic, yet you bought into the fantasy because it was just, you know, so well told. So I kind of just want to go, you know, back and forth about, okay, you know, Amityville Horror. I mean, is that something that falls into the fantasy horror? Or is that really could happen, you know, if it's like a psychological thing less than something that really was occurring?
Well, this is an interesting question I wanted to ask you because I was kind of like, you know, there's a show Mindhunter that's playing on Netflix right now, and everybody's like freaking out over it. It's like it's second season. So basically, it's these FBI profilers from Quantico that are trying to like hone their skills, and they're talking to, like, say, the all-stars of serial killers. to find somebody on the outside. But there's an interesting thing that I wanted to ask you about, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but is there any truth to the fact that, you know, there's a scene where they're talking to David Berkowitz, and he was saying, you know, Son of Sam, and they were saying that he supposedly, like, you know, he wasn't, you know, like this psychosexual guy. That's not why he did what he did. He saw The Exorcist or something, and that kind of like sent him on this like path of, you know, of doing, you know, what he did in New York City. Is there any truth to that? Do you know? Because I don't know anything about serial killers. I just thought that was really fascinating that he brought that up.
Well,
and that might just be the show. I don't know, but
it's interesting you bring that up, because that comes up a lot. You know, when I kind of got away from horror as like fantasy horror, you know, obviously in the 80s I did Jason, I did a Freddy's Nightmare, I did Stephen King, Sometimes They Come Back, all that kind of fall into the fantasy horror. And then suddenly I'm doing, you know, based on a true story horror, and I was dealing with, you know, people that were basically serial killers in some way, shape, or form. And to research it, I'd get these numbers of guys that were in prison, you know, life terms and stuff, they're the ones who were not put to death. Yeah. And you talk to them and they come up with all kinds of reasons of why they did what they did, you know, what was going through their head. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you hear everything from, well, I was thinking I was Jason.
Movies, yeah.
I was just thinking I was Jason, you know. I don't particularly think that was really going on in their head, but they're looking for some sort of reason, or they heard voices.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, who was somebody who shot was it President Ford that got shot by somebody who said that, you know, did it because of Jodie Foster and Taxi Driver?
Right, yeah. That was Hinckley, right?
Yeah, that's it. No. I just think there's these kind of bullshit reasons that come on, you know, I'll listen to Rob Zombie and that's what did it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, please, I mean, you can't say that these movies create the fire in somebody. It's already there. I mean, whether it puts some gasoline on there from time to time and helps you justify it, you know, in a way, but that you can't put the blame on that. I mean, there's so many of us who watch things, and it's, you know, it's entertainment. It was supposed to be entertainment. It's not supposed to motivate people to do anything other than escape for 90 minutes, you know, in that. So you got to kind of take all those excuses with I think a big grain of salt.
I think so too. You know, I think so too. You know, you were saying before that obviously it's for entertainment value. I never wanted to go and smash somebody's fucking head in, you know, maybe like, you know, inside the, you know, old noggin here, but I would never fucking do it. And I think, you know, not only just, you know, you know, not only just for fans, but, you know, just for regular people, like, you know, some of them just like to watch horror so they don't have to do that shit, you know, like, as I give everybody crazy eyes. You know.
And there's a thing too that
you're right. If somebody's just trying to find an excuse to, you know, kind of, you know, come up with an idea of why they did something heinous or whatever.
Well, the horror audience, by and large, is a young audience too, and you can still be 60 and be young, you know, in terms of your thinking. But I mean, in general, it's really going for people who feeling about death is so far away. You know, you're not concerned about that. You can watch these, you know, horrific things happen, and it's like, oh, you know, it's entertaining. It's out there. You're not relating to it. It's like somebody who's going, I wouldn't want that to happen to me. You know, it's not that crowd, you know, it's a crowd that much more wants to go into the fun house and get scared or talk ghost stories or talk things that are scary.
Yeah.
And it's a much more fun thing. I mean, people forget that part of Christmas used to be telling ghost stories, you know, which is the whole, you know, Christmas Carol thing, you know, coming up with something that really is spooky and scary on Christmas Eve. So, I mean, it was such a tradition for so many years, you know. Now, of course, you know, we've got one of the biggest renaissances in horror, you know, ever, and we haven't even got to all the movies that are coming this year still to come, and it's great for those of us that are fans.
So you know, like we're talking like, you know, a side-by-side comparison of like a supernatural and of course something that could actually happen. So give me like your best example, like to start off with, as far as what we're doing here.
Well, one of my favorites was Repulsion, the Roman Polanski movie, because here you have a beautiful girl and you're watching her slowly descend, you know, into this psychotic state. And it was just, you know, I mean, it was just scary to see somebody like that you were caring about just go so far off the deep end. And again, totally possible, totally something that could happen and does happen. I mean, that I know I kept going back and really studying that movie in terms of why is this working so well. You know, that Halloween, you know, we talked about too. It's like, could that happen on a certain level? Yeah. I mean, you know, it might take, you know, I don't know how many, you know, pounds of crack in somebody that you would keep shooting them and they still keep getting up. But I mean, it is somehow possible. You know, people do fall out of 4-story buildings and hit the ground and somehow bounce back up again. Doesn't happen all the time, but there is, it's not out there like in a, you know, Freddy's Nightmare kind of thing with the bed sucking you up and, you know, the amount of blood and all those things that kind of go on with the more the fantasy horror. So, I mean, do I have a preference? Actually not. I love both of them for like completely different reasons, but there are some that really, I don't know, they stick out in a kind of a whole different way, like The Witch recently. You know, did that happen? I don't know. Is it a great scary story? Yeah, it was a really well done, you know, and this next one looks pretty cool too.
The Lighthouse.
So, yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at on that one.
Brittany, like what terrifies you more? Like, is it things that you can't explain, or is it something that could actually like happen? And the best example of like what terrifies you as far as supernatural versus, you know, reality.
I don't know. See, reality probably freaks me out the most. Like I know you brought up The Strangers already, but that's one that, like, when I first saw it, I was like, it freaked me out so much. I had a hard time staying home by myself and stuff like that. So stuff like that, and like The Last House on the Left, like things that actually happen to a person, especially me being a woman and The Last House on the Left and what she goes through and stuff like that. That type of stuff freaks me out. Although I do believe in the paranormal, so for me, those type of movies like the Conjuring movies I really liked, and Insidious, like those ones to me are kind of plausible and reality because, you know, I believe in that type of stuff and like dark entities and, you know, ghosts and hauntings and stuff. So those two types probably freak me out the most versus like if it's an actual creature where I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely can't happen. So.
Have you ever experienced anything like that before? Because honestly, I have not.
Yeah, I have. That's probably why I believe in it. But I swear, and my friends swear that my childhood home was haunted. So that was something. And then I actually would go. I went ghost hunting a couple times with this older lady and her family. And then we also, I've just gone ghost hunting with people before, and we've gotten some stuff. So yeah, that's why that type of stuff like really freaks me out.
So does it fascinate you or freak you out?
I'm very fascinated and drawn to it. It also freaks me out, but I also like, I know how to keep myself kind of safe and what to like stay away from in order not to like bite anything in, you know, type of thing.
So we're going to get a little political on here, guys, simply because, you know, this is the times that we're living in. Not discrediting anybody for your beliefs, just, you know, to let you know beforehand, but, you know, we are going to mention some things.
You're not going to say you want for another term.
The one thing that really terrifies me, and we were speaking about this earlier, is there is this weird, you know, like there's a lot of things that are, you know, bleeding into reality as far as like, you know, dystopian novels and, you know, even just, you know, fictional novels that we've loved for years. One of them obviously being Stephen King's The Dead Zone. With somebody like, you know, this is what terrifies me more than anything. You know, I've been part of, you know, the U.S. military. I've, you know, dealt with the government. I've been part of the government, you know, so to speak. And, you know, like I still have a deep distrust for it. So when things like this come out in the open, like, for example, Trump saying he's the chosen one and all this other stuff, that terrifies me simply because I remember reading The Dead Zone years and years before. And, you know, this is the amalgamation of Greg Stillson, the character that Stephen King created, you know, for this book. And there's just like so much, you know, stuff coming, you know, bleeding out from, you know, like his motivations and what he's saying, and, you know, this whole like megalomaniacal thing he's got going on. And obviously, you know, he's got like, you know, severe, like, you know, head issues and stuff like that. And people are just okay with it. You know, so we don't necessarily get to have the touch, you know, we don't have, you know, the Christopher Walken power to be able to come up on him and touch him and see what he's going to do in the next, you know, say year, you know, whatever, like, even if he's, you know, especially if he's reelected, that shit terrifies me more than anything, is a politician, you know, like that was, you know, like not obviously not crafted for, you know, for this character, but is becoming this fucking character from this Stephen King novel. It's horrifying. It really is.
What was the movie though?
It
What was the movie?
Oh, what movie?
Yeah, exactly. No,
was a book.
like, how do you put that into a movie other than what Stephen King did? Because the reality is like, you can't.
Oh,
you know,
I can honestly, like, I can see Trump doing all the things that Martin Sheen did in that movie. You know, the way he went up to somebody and says, "You're gonna push that goddamn button now," and all this other shit. I can fucking see him doing that for real. That's, you know, that's not an SJW liberal fear. I don't really consider myself a liberal, but like, you know, it's just like the type of things that were going on in that particular movie that, you know, like, especially when Christopher Walken touched, you know, Martin Sheen for the first time, I could, you know, personally, I could see that occurring at some point. If somebody gets powerful enough or hungry enough to, you know, whatever, you know, push a button, you know, just to show, you know, whose dick is bigger or whatever. That shit terrifies me more than anything.
we need to get back into the movies and escape all this. Let's talk about Scream for a second here. Was Scream scary or is it just funny?
You know, Scream to me, but only because like I know, you know, like what, you know, like Wes Craven was intending with that, will always be like a satire to me.
Yeah.
You know, so I wouldn't necessarily call it scary. I mean, you know, like, I mean, obviously that could happen. Like a young person could, you know, obviously just get a Halloween costume and, you know, go batshit and, you know, kill people for whatever intention or whatever. But
yeah, I don't think anything was supernatural whatsoever in that, you know, but
no,
it was commenting on the movies as well as it was trying to make a villain and a you know, a killer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's another thing too that I'd love to kind of throw out there is, you know, we used to talk about, you know, movies that were vengeful, thrilling, terrifying, which to me is very different than a horror movie where something is absolutely horrific. Obviously something with gore is like, that's horrible. I don't want to go there. You know, you know, watching a child become this demon in The Exorcist was horrible, you know, and there is that sort of thing too, that you know, we sort of now, everything's a horror movie, no matter what it is, if it's the least bit scary or, you know, has tension in it, you know, like Get Out to me is not a horror movie, yet people were calling it, you know, by a long shot. To me, it had an incredible message. It was certainly scary, but it really, you know, fulfilled a thriller, you know, a real edge of your seat, you know, could this actually happen? I don't think so, but what if it did? I mean, it opened so many different possibilities that it really worked on a whole different level than Us did, you know, his follow-up to that.
Well, the interesting thing about Get Out, I remember I actually wrote an article for a company called Fansided a few years ago when the movie came out, and you know, like I grew up in urban areas and stuff especially when I was like in my teens or whatever. But like, I went back and I really just kind of focused on myself, you know, for that particular movie and the idea of it. And, you know, honestly, I think, you know, to certain degrees, like, you know, us as, you know, individuals, you know, whatever, you know, be it ethnicity or whatever, I think we're all guilty at some point of maybe making, you know, like we're trying to make somebody of a different race comfortable, but at the same time, we're kind of making them feel uneasy. And I think that was pretty much the main thing. And I'm guilty of that many times over, I think, you know, as I was going on, you know, into my brain pan trying to, you know, like, you know, maybe I spoke slang in, you know, like in places where I didn't really need to, and, you know, stuff like that, you know, just to make myself feel comfortable, but at the same time,
we all want that, you know, be accepted. And, you know, we do this all the time in life, constantly. You know, oh, I understand you golf. Yeah, I don't golf myself, but I love watching it. You know, whatever it takes, you know, we try to find some way to relate to somebody, you know, and it can come out sometimes wrong. And, you know, but it's human nature, you know, it's that thing of, you know, you want them to like you too.
Well, one of the interesting things that I recall Bradley Whitford saying to the main character is like, I think he said it like maybe like 4 times. He's like, I just want you to know, I voted for Obama. You know, I voted for Obama. I voted for Obama. And, you know, like, that's what I'm talking about as far as like, you know, we say things to try to make people feel comfortable. At the same time, we're just coming off as like, you know. So, I mean, you know, would I necessarily call that like a fear-based thing? I honestly, like, I can't remember a moment where I personally, like, you know, was in that kind of situation. But if I was of a different ethnicity, sure, I can totally see Get Out being terrifying, and, you know, like, I'm staying the fuck away from you, whitey. Like, you know what I mean? Like, honestly, I could see that happening, and it did happen. That's why it's so culturally prevalent today.
I mean, the word horror is, just as I said, has become really synonymous with pretty much anything that's scary. But you know, I guess I'm more old school in that I love having things a little more, you know, in a division. You know, it's like, if you want to talk about, you know, pure, unadulterated horror, you know, torture porn, you know, hostile, those things are really, like, I mean, that's hard for a lot of people to watch, me included, because they kind of cross that line into a whole other thing. And we had that, you know, going on for a while, but then it stopped. It seemed like, you know, it wasn't really what people wanted to see at a certain point. You know, it was interesting at first, and then, like, where beyond this, you know, Centipede, you know, there were some things that were pretty out there, you know. But when it gets down to it, I remember when Blair Witch came out, which was, again, something that easily happened. They made it seem like it was reality with the cameras and all that stuff. And I heard all these incredible things about it, like, you know, you got to watch this thing, it's going to scare the hell out of you. And I got bootleg, you know, videotapes, and, you know, watched it at home in the day, and I darkened all the curtains and said, I want to go for a ride on this thing. And I watched it, and I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciated it. But for somehow the filmmaker side of me sort of saw the trick, you know, saw what they were trying to do. And a week later, I went to a preview of Sixth Sense, and it was like day and night in terms of the audience reaction. And I thought, well, here's a movie that you could have pulled off the shelves from the 1970s and said, you know, this hasn't been seen before. Take a look at this. And it worked with all those old basic rules and stuff. And I think ultimately that was the one that was probably even a bigger hit. If you compare the budgets, of course not, but certainly in regards to the fact that what really delivered for an audience, kind of that expectation factor of you know, a real scare movie.
Well, before I ask Brittany, you know, her next choice, I grew up on the East Coast when that came out, Blair Witch Project. And I do recall, you know, like the hysteria that came from that movie. And, you know, like we're hook, line, and sinker fell for the fact that these people were real. It wasn't until I moved to Indiana, I believe, that, like, I think one of the actors was on a fucking Steak and Shake commercial. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like, then I started to piece it together. Oh, wait, you know, none of this is true. I remember we were at a house party in a more well-to-do area, and somebody, I don't know who the fuck it was, like, actually put a stick man in the woods that were behind the house. It was and I just remember that moment where, like, you know, like, because people were like, oh my god, like, we were probably like, you know, 19, 20 at the time, and I'm the one that's like, all right, settle down, we're gonna figure this out, you know, like, everybody recoup, you know. So I already had that, you know, horror instinct or whatever, because not everybody was a horror fan, but I knew exactly what to do, supposedly. Like, yeah, we're going to survive this, guys. Don't worry. You know? But,
I mean, I really liked them. I thought they did an amazing job, and really groundbreaking in terms of using the internet to kind of do the initial publicity and get the word out. So people came wanting to be scared, you know, already kind of scared at the whole notion.
Yeah.
But it gets down to my, you know, great witch stories that are believable. I'm very old school. I go back to Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
Because I mean, other than talking about the eyes, you know, which we only sort of thought we saw, you know, because the way Polanski, you know, shot that and edited, you know, that the whole rest of it could be just a woman going off, you know, and yet we knew it was like incredible coven, and you know, it was, you know, so scary on that realistic basis. But it was, you know, ultimately kind of a fantasy of being impregnated by Satan himself. But we buying into it, and still, when I used to go out, you know, to, you know, right after that, when I was pitching stories and stuff, it was always like, well, that was really good, Tom, but you got any kind of Rosemary Baby kind of a sort of a thing? I mean, it was, that's what they wanted, you know, find some way that you can do something inexpensive within that way. And then, of course, later, after the success of Halloween, it was all about, give me a force, give me a knife, give me some girls, let's go.
Well, the fascinating thing about Rosemary's Baby is like all those people were like really kind, you know, like as far as Satanists were concerned, like, you know, in that time period, you know, they just wanted to make sure that she was comfortable and she was safe and the baby was safe, and they were just protecting her. You know, which really honestly gave me a new perspective on, you know, Satanism, obviously, because, you know, it is technically just a religion, and, you know, they have their own beliefs, and, you know, usually, you know, like because of movies you hear it's about like torture and sacrifice and all this other shit, but that really gave me a new perspective on them. And, you know, a good majority of Satanists that I know in reality are very kind-hearted, loving, respectful people. It's usually the Christians and the Catholics that have a stick up their ass. And
you know, it's to me, it's the old thing of like, you know, there's a statement that supposedly, you know, as you know, a Christian is supposed to stand, you know, in front of the cross, you know, and that's their support. But there's a lot of people to me that hide behind the cross, and it's like, this is what I am. This is, you know, and they're pushing it in a way that it's completely opposite of what, you know, Jesus, you know, preached. You know, if you go back and look at the New Testament. But there's so many things that through the Bible are so horrific and so intense and you know, the sacrificing, you know, your children, you know, for God. I mean, far beyond anything that we could get away with, you know, with movies and stuff. Yeah. It just really, you know, crosses the line, yet it's biblical.
Yeah. So aside from, you know, like, you know, the devil films and all that stuff, I mean, that's something we can, you know, step into like for hours and hours upon end. Is there something else that you wanted to talk about that, like, you know, really terrifies you as far as like, you know, a supernatural idea, or say, you know, something that can actually happen in reality?
It would be The Purge when I first saw it. Now, I've only seen the first one, but like as the world progresses, I'm like, this seems like it could become more plausible. So I guess that and like the potential of maybe that happening in the future is something that kind of terrifies me. And yeah, that one's the one I've got.
What about that, you know, terrifies you the most? Because, you know, we were talking about The Hunt before, and I think that's you know, like, honestly, like, I see where that's going as far as like, you know, there is this Hatfield, you know, like, to use a term that Tommy's used before, a Hatfields and McCoy situation with the Democrats and the Republicans of the world. So I can definitely see something like The Hunt, you know, like, not necessarily that particular subject matter, but some, you know, like, hopefully, God forbid it doesn't happen, but, you know, blood being spilled because, you know, like, you've got your beliefs and they have theirs. And, you know, I could definitely see something like along those lines happening for sure. But I think the thing with The Purge, for me, that I love so much about it is like, at first it was, you know, like this, it was obviously like, you know, this politically kind of charged, you know, like neo future, like, you know, thing that was going on. And then, like, you know, as the sequel progressed, it kind of became like Escape from New York, in a way. You know what I mean? And I can honestly see Escape from New York happening before The Purge, you know, certain aspects of it, you know, like, you know, taking a certain city and making it like, you know, a prison area and all that stuff. I mean, there's so many different possibilities of chaos. And so, you know, so like, you know, as far as all that, I mean, you know, like what terrifies you the most is, you know, in terms of that Purge series, like what are you most frightened
Well, see,
about?
I only watched the first one. It wasn't like the whole series that freaked
Mhm.
me out. It was just the first one that, you know, I don't know. Just the fact that like I just could feel like maybe that could happen, like that,
Mhm.
and people just getting free reign to do whatever the heck they want, you know,
Mhm.
because the world's become so violent nowadays. Like it just seems like it's slowly, you have to be careful where you go, or, you know, so the world's becoming more violent, just like
Yeah.
that. And so I don't know.
Well, it seems like, you know, a lot of these, like, you know, mass shootings and stuff, you know, not to get too much into it, but like, it seems like, you know, when they're finally accosted, you know, like, and, you know, they just kind of get a slap on the wrist, you know? And that to me is like the most terrifying aspect of it. Like, you know, you see like, you know, say, you know, a black individual getting pulled over for something ridiculous and they're getting tased and, you know, slammed against the car. But, you know, these guys, you know, like walks into a fucking Walmart with a, you know, with an Armalite assault rifle, and, you know, like they're just, you know, like lightly getting, you know, handcuffed, and, you know, watch your head, sir, you know, like, so, you know, that aspect of it.
We don't see what goes on behind the scenes though.
I
With what the
That's true too. That's true too. I think you know, the thing that, you know, obviously terrifies me. Well, the thing that fascinates me more about the Purge than anything, is like every time I watch these movies, I'm thinking to myself, you know, what the hell happens in that world, you know, like all the rest of the days of the week, aside from just the Purge
Right.
night. And they're finally doing that with the USA series. They're going to show you what goes on the rest of the year. You know, all the cleanup crews that have to go out and, you know, like, you know, just like, you know, scrub houses and, you know, dump bodies like in, you know, into vans and drive them off to, I mean, like that's what fascinates me the most about the Purge,
Hmm.
because that shit's got to be a mess the next
Yeah.
day.
Yeah,
The next couple
sure.
months or whatever. Yeah.
what do we want to see them cleaning up after Woodstock? Isn't that
Uh,
where's the conflict in the rock and roll?
The Purge movie where the Native American starts crying, one tear. Uh, you know what? You know, we were talking about this before, Brittany, when you brought up Hush, you know, last week for a Final Girls episode.
Uh-huh.
You know, very slightly talking about it with Tommy, but, you know, the thing I think that terrifies me the most is that it seems like with social media and all these different, you know, like facets that we have available to us to, you know, communicate with people. I'm not saying it's everybody, you know, everybody has that ability or everybody wants to do this, but, you know, like from my experience of talking to women that, you know, like even just on Facebook and things like that, it seems like there's this culture of wanting to basically stalk somebody and terrify them. You know what I mean? Like if you don't get your way or if they say no to you, that
Yeah.
that you know, terrifies me more than anything else. As far as uh, I would be horrified to, you know, not saying that I can relate, but I would be horrified to be, say, a woman in this day and age, and obviously that's something that hasn't changed, you know, for decades. You know, like where a man can, like, you know, walk to his car at night, you know, like you have to walk with, you know, like keys in your fist or whatever, and that, you know, like that sucks. You have to be like cautious every moment of your life. You know, and I guess, like, you know, when I was, you know, when you're talking about Hush, that seemed very realistic to me, that there'd be one guy out there that just, like, you know, I don't have any motivation here. I really honestly, like, you know, I just want to terrify you, and I'm going to kill you. I can get in this house at any fucking moment, you know, and you can't stop me. And that was pretty
Well,
much
that's
his
like
motivation.
with the strangers and the one line that they had, like, "Why are you doing this to us?" And
Because you
they're
were
just
home.
like, "'Cause you're home."
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that really
terrifying.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, no reason, just because you're here. So whenever they add stuff like that where they don't even have a reason and they're just doing it for pure joy or entertainment for themselves, that
Yeah.
would heighten the, the terror of it all.
The thing I wanted to talk about is, for me, I grew up Catholic, extremely Catholic, and I wanted to get more into the supernatural end of things because I was raised Catholic, and I believed in hell and I believed in all these things when I was growing up. Hellraiser scared the shit out of me, terrified me, and I don't think I could watch that movie until I was probably about 15 years old. It really fucked with me. Like, just the trailer. I didn't even see the movie. Just the trailer, seeing those Cenobites and all that stuff like that. That scared the shit out of me. But that was actually something I got to tell Doug Bradley years ago. He got a kick out of that because he's like a full-on atheist or whatever. But we were talking about devil stuff before, but I think that aspect of it, especially when I was younger, was definitely a factor in terrifying me. It wasn't really like the reality of things. It was more like, things I, couldn't understand, or, things that were kind of like pressed upon us. Like, oh, you got to say your act in tradition. You're going to hell. You're going to hell. You're going to hell. And Hellraiser definitely was one of those that did that for me. That was a real fucking fear for a long time.
But how many churches started to fill up after The Exorcist? That pushed a lot of buttons and sent people right back. Like, if that can go into that little girl, with all the shit I've done,
we're all fucked. Yeah.
Same thing. The Omen. Then when we went to that period of "Is God Dead?" That might be something interesting to talk about too. Is how horror has changed over the decades, from the universal horror monsters that, Frankenstein caused people to faint. Dracula scared the hell out of them. The Wolfman, all those things. And then as the years went on, more and more it kind of adjusted to the atomic age, and obviously Cronenberg stuff that got into science and all that creepy stuff with his movies, Dead Ringers, and just some incredibly intense stuff. And then we get to today, and it's kind of interesting. Like, it follows. It's a sexual thing. That if you get involved here, it's all because of sex.
Mm-hmm.
I love what John did with A Quiet Place, because it's like nobody's really done the scary thing of sound, and watch people jump out of their seats because of silence. He learned how to create a fear by taking away sound. So I love how each generation tends to find new things that can still scare us.
Well, here's the great thing about, say, like A Quiet Place, because there was like all these different factors that a lot of people weren't paying attention to. I saw that movie like 6 times when it came out. I was so in love with that fucking movie because I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And I remember, I think it was probably like the 4th time. That's when everybody in the audience was quiet. Like, nobody wanted to eat, nobody wanted to drink. Like, they just, I've never seen a theater more quiet than that.
Church.
Yeah, it was church. But yeah, the thing I love about The Quiet Place is like all the different aspects that you don't necessarily see. Like, when they're raiding the drugstore or whatever, you see there's like an aisle of snack foods, like potato chips and stuff like that, that's just filled to the gills, because obviously, like, you're not going to want that. You know what I mean? Like, on your journey. I thought that, those different, pieces of just set design was just like, oh, so good. So good. But yeah, I get what you're saying. There is different, obviously different territories, when it comes to fear. And we're talking about reality and supernatural, like, all these different, aspects, that have been around through the years or whatever. I'm hoping that there is, on my end, I'm hoping there is this continuous conversation about, what is going on in reality. There's always been some sort of, that's kind of been the situation for a long time, with George Romero's films. Tobe Hooper was kind of like, he was kind of like, playing on the idea with Texas Chainsaw Massacre that, like, you just saw the Vietnam War on the news all the fucking time. You know what I mean? So you just saw terror in front of your face, like, all day long. That's why I gave it that documentary feel. there's always been a political spin to horror in some regard, you know, whatever is going on in that, you know, particular, you know, point in time. And I hope that continues, but, you know, we do need to be able to escape as well. And I'm hoping that, you know, like, that's why I loved Ready or Not, is because, you know, you just go and you just have a blast, and you don't have to think about, you know, like the bullshit of your life for a minute. And, you know, I'm hoping that continues as well, that there's, you know, like a really good mixed bag there, for you to think and feel and all that stuff, but at the same time be able to escape.
Yeah, there's one thing I'd love to share, because this was something personally that happened. I mean, what is probably the most frightening thing that's happened to this country, you know, in our generation, is 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously devastatingly scary. Still, we're dealing with all that stuff with TSA. And, you know, the other day I was watching some incredibly elderly man being pulled up out of his wheelchair, his shoes taken off, all this. You go, oh, please, you know, but that's the price that we paid.
Yeah.
But a week after 9/11 happened, I had tickets, because it was the beginning of the Halloween season, to go to Not Scary Farm, which is this thing, you know, with zombies and stuff. And it was sort of like me, and there was like 5 of us, you know, we're part of a group called the Horror Club. And we, you know, we go every year to the Universal one or to the Not Scary Farm one, but we're, you know, what is it going to be like this year? I mean, 9/11 was just a week away. What could be more scary than that?
Mm-hmm.
And we show up, and it's like packed, and it was like 9/11 never happened.
Yeah.
You know, people walking through mazes, and it was just that need to just do what we always do. You know, there's nothing we can do. It's just like way over the top in terms of what we're able to control or whatever. But this kind of one-on-one horror, like in a movie or obviously in the, you know, Halloween maze, is something that, you know, you can walk through, you can get out, you can laugh afterwards, and it's over. You know, we can't laugh off the stuff that's going on in the news, but we can try to escape it.
I think honestly, like, probably the most poignant, if you know, most poignant story out there as far as, like, you know, what we're facing right now, what we could potentially face in the future, is probably the Handmaid's Tale, which I absolutely adore. I love that show, but it is so that one rings true to me more than honestly anything else out there, and that's fucking scary. You know, and we were going through that situation here in Georgia where, like, you know, they were talking about a heartbeat bill, and, like, you know, actually, like, you know, putting women in prison for, say, having an abortion, or, you know, like, we were going through that in our fucking real time, you know? So, you know, there's a lot of horrifying things out there to, you know, like, as far as, like, you know, somebody that, like, if I actually saw somebody like that was just like, you know, I want to be a horror director, or I want to write a script or whatever, but I can't come up with an idea. There's no fucking way that you can not tap into something that's going on right now to create a story. You know what I mean? It's
going into you, and it's going to have an effect one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know, it's either you're going to embrace it or you're going to try to get away from it. It definitely affects all of us. So,
but, you know, like, obviously it was, you know, like, this is like my favorite book of all time, my favorite miniseries of all time. We were talking about Mick, you know, shout out to Mick, but, you know, like, it didn't play on the fears of 9/11, but, you know, something like The Stand, you know, we were talking about before, or even something like, you know, 28 Days Later, which did kind of, you know, like, play into the 9/11 fears, I believe. You know, as like, you know, as epic and as big as those stories are, you know, I think they definitely, like, you know, speak to, you know, to a time that's, you know, that's going on right now. And that's why I'm really fascinated to see what CBS All Access is going to do with the Josh Boone version of The Stand. Like, is it going to be more modern? Obviously, is it going to play into, you know, the different ideals that were going on, you know, right now, as far as, you know, like, you know, maybe this, you know, divide in the country or whatever. That would make more sense, I think, as far as, like, you know, the Mother Abigail sect, and then, you know, the Flag sect over in Las Vegas. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I thought about it very long and hard for a very long time. And I think I'd be in Vegas. I think I'd be a flag person. Mother Abigail just sounds like a drag. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Well, here's the big question I have. What's more scary to you? Sitting down watching Freaks, Todd Browning's Freaks, or Super Size Me?
What do you think, Britt?
God, I haven't seen either of those.
Oh. It's okay.
Super Size Me like is horrifying. The fact that dude would go into
I know.
that's crazy.
Yeah. The fact that all of us are doing that on some level, certainly.
Oh, I don't eat fast food at all, man.
But
no.
most of America does, 8 gazillion billion up on that sign now, But yeah, just the fact that he put himself through that, is just to me so horrific. And then the movie like Freaks, we're looking.
So how many Big Macs did he eat a day? Do you remember?
I can't recall. I think he just did like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, didn't he?
So is that like a movie or a documentary about
it? Was a documentary. This guy, literally, he ate McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for months, and his cholesterol went through the roof, and he
almost died.
Ate, how many pounds, Tommy? 80, 90, something like that, maybe more. Ugh. He was on death's door.
Why wouldn't he just stop?
He was trying to prove a point.
Trying to make a point.
Morgan Spurlock was his name.
Yeah.
What was his point? That fast food was bad?
Yeah.
Okay. But he wanted to really take it to the nth degree, really show you if you kept doing this how far it would go. But
right.
And I mean, for some people that wasn't entertaining. For me, it was like, all right, if he's going to do this, I'm going to sit and watch it.
Right.
It's like watching a car crash. Yeah. What dystopian novel can you see actually occurring, or what is that's occurring right now? I would say A Clockwork Orange. We were talking about it before. I think that definitely has the capacity of a reality, and it already is. It already is. Gang violence is going up, and in certain places, and I can definitely see that. I could see that coming to fruition more than anything else. Is probably A Clockwork Orange.
I mean, any movie. I can't think of one right off the top of my head, but anyone that brings up the Civil War aspect of our country happening again. And I mean, there is that whole thing that is starting to happen, and I don't want to go back into the political thing, but that to me is scary, that suddenly we start coming up against each other again, and dividing up the camps of what do you believe and what you don't believe, and what do you think is stupid and what are you really angry about, and you want somebody to voice that. It's I never thought we would go back into war, after the Vietnam thing. I never thought so many of these things were going to come back. And that kind of stuff's scary to me, if that was dramatized in some sort of film. But if we're talking just, the fun of horror movies, it really is not getting so much into those eco-horror type things. It's more, finding things that A Quiet Place, where it's like, we're there, we're part of that. Alive in that, and that's scary enough. And then at least when it's over, you can go back into the real world and deal with that, feeling a little stronger because you got through this roller coaster ride somehow. You survived that, so maybe the other stuff I can still survive some way, somehow.
Yeah, it's there, like we were talking about it before, as far as horror ideas. I mean, there's so many different things that are going on right now. The fact that you can't have an opinion, you can't even not like a film with somebody just going crazy and snapping on you. I don't know. There's definitely an Orwellian vibe going on in this world right now. I feel that very deeply. 1984, obviously. With Russian interference in our voting systems, all kinds of different things that we can play into. Brittany, is there a dystopian story that you remember that that feels real today, as far as where we're at in our world and whatnot?
I don't really know. No, not to me, because I don't really read that many dystopian stories or anything like that.
Try to stay away from that stuff.
I mean, I don't know. I just never have gotten into it, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but I don't
Maybe
know.
Tommy and I are different. Maybe we're just weird like that. Like Tommy, do you just like, I don't know. I mean,
Well, the fact we're both wearing hats.
do you like reading things that bum you out every once in a while? I kind of feel that way a little bit.
See, I don't like that stuff.
Do I like things that bum me out? No, I mean, I like when I can see the craft of something. This is what I was saying, Blair Witch. I really enjoyed watching how they did something very unique, or like you were saying about you had to see A Quiet Place a number of times to, keep going through it. And I mean, it's certainly not bumming me out. It's like, if we're talking about movies, it's really, I don't particularly want to be reminded of anything that's really real at this moment, but I want to believe the actors are true to the situation. And as a director, I face this all the time where I got to sit down with somebody and say, look, I've got to talk you into why it's a really good thing to kill your mother in this movie. Yeah. And what she has done to you, and how you put up with it, and all the rest of this. And you are doing the world a service by doing it, because you have to buy into that as the actor to do some of these horrific things. And this is where it gets really scary, because, you see movies where the villains just are so delighted, with what they're doing, and obviously Hannibal Lecter's on that far end of that, spectrum. But it just in general, or people that just can't understand some very simple, basic truth about life. And they're just, they're angry because it's like, I don't understand it. And it's stupid, and again, it's that thing of the human behavior. And as a director, I love sitting down with actors and really exploring those psychological things and letting them completely buy into a thinking that is maybe completely not theirs at all, or even something they even want to embrace. But for this role, you have to do it. Yeah. That's more fascinating to me than anything else about, making movies.
Brittany, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't have anything to add to that. I was just thinking, one thing, and I'm probably alone on this, but like movies like The Possession or like Annabelle, where like it's, you're taking an item home, and that's kind of the scary thing, like especially with The Possession, where it's just a random like jewelry box, I believe, that she finds and takes home. Like, since I kind of believe in that stuff, like, just like if you go out and find, you have to be careful about even what you bring into your home whenever you go out to just garage sales or anything like that, because you don't know what you could be taking. So for something like The Possession, that seems kind of real to me in that sense, where you could be bringing something in.
That's one thing that never really bothered me. You could put me in a room full of fucking dolls and I would sleep just fine. There was just something.
My mom used to get me the like porcelain dolls, and I was like, no. Closet door stays shut.
They need to go outside the door. Yeah.
I'm with Brittany on the possession thing and the stuff that we don't understand, because I've had enough encounters, and I'll certainly share one thing. Don't fuck around with Ouija boards, guys.
That's why I was like, Ouija boards, no.
From early on, I saw some things happen, which is a whole nother episode. But it's just, it's like opening your front door, going, anybody want to come in?
Yeah.
Who's going to come in? Not the people you want, So it's like, that's one of those things that does have something about it. And whether you want to call it ghosts, demons, or just an energy that we don't quite understand yet, there are things out there more than news, weather, and sports. And I obviously, you feel the same way I do, Brittany. It's like there's something
right.
goes on.
Well, it's just crazy that you don't have to worry just about like yourself, and like, you can believe in whatever you believe, do what you do to protect yourself, but you can't know if something's attached to an item that you bring into your home. Yeah. So that kind of is freaky to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to end it on this note, and I'm kind of going to play into a really great cult classic that Bill Paxton directed called Frailty. There's a lot of evil in this world as far as, individuals, and I think that's what terrifies me the most. there, you know, I wouldn't be able to say demonic forces. I don't know if that's a reality or not. If that's, you know, like if there's a demon that, you know, could climb onto people and make them do certain things that they normally wouldn't do. I don't know if that's a thing. But you know, to have that ability obviously would be a great thing to be able to, like, you know, I mean, obviously you've got your, you know, your own personal radar and stuff, and you like know who not to speak to and, you know, who not to, you know, like deal with or whatever. But, you know, I think that's where, you know, like, you know, we were talking about The Stand earlier. I think that's where The Stand comes in. I mean, there is definitely good and evil in this world. And nothing is more horrifying. And as far as our genre, you know, like when it comes to the news, that's the most terrifying thing that, you know, that's out there right now, I think. And the interesting thing about it is, like, you know, we use horror as a gateway to break free from all this stuff, you know, to break free from the reality of our lives. And the fact that we get joy from it, or some sort of passion or drive, I think it definitely says a lot, you know, when it comes to what's supposedly, like, you know, really horrible for us or whatever, you know, compared to, you know, like what's in front of our face every day, you know, as far as our 6 o'clock news, you know, 24-hour news, you know, and nothing's bipartisan anymore. Everything is, you know, very tribal. You know, this is a very, like, kind of Lord of the Flies kind of situation we're in right now as far as the world is concerned. But there is a lot of greatness in the world too. And I do want to, you know, like, end off on a happy note, is that, like, you know, even in this genre, there's a lot of wonderful people that, like, you know, take care of each other and you know, care about each other, and, you know, support, you know, each other's work and all that stuff. You know, like, I just didn't want to leave on a bummer note.
Right. Definitely.
No. Well, you want to hear something kind of, you know, I'm part of a group that McGarris put together called Masters of Horror.
Yeah.
And we
I
would
love
have
Masters
these
of Horror.
have for, you know, I want to say over a decade now. But we were at one, and it was like, I believe Quentin was there. It's hard to remember because there were so many of them, so many.
Oh, you're talking about the dinner that Mick has
Dinner.
every year. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it was like, you know, Wes Craven and Toby Hooper and John Landis and Rob Zombie and on and on and on. There was about, I mean, it's amazing. You see pictures and it looks like, you know, the Last Supper times 20. I mean, things got bigger as more and more new horror directors came into it. But we were sitting there one time, and suddenly, I don't remember which director said it, and he goes, hold it, because everybody's talking. All right, let's all decide, what is the scariest movie you've ever seen? And so there was like dead quiet as everybody's like trying to figure out, what did they say? And you know what, the one that unanimously everybody agreed on? The Last Temptation of Christ.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Go figure, with all these horror experts, they found that whole beating of Christ so horrible and so undeserved. And so, you know, what Mel Gibson did with that movie was decided that was the most horrific movie that has been made, you know, just based on that.
Well, it's like Jesus getting the shit beat out of him for 2.5 hours straight. I mean, it's nonstop.
And a piece, you know, a nice Jewish boy. Why? What did he do?
All right, guys. Well, I think it's a good time to leave it on that note. I hope you guys got, like, a little bit of an education as far as, like, reality versus, you know, fiction. You know, obviously there's things in this world that can happen, and there's things that we don't know about and are unexplained, which, you know, makes, I think, life more fascinating and interesting. You know, because there are things we don't know about, and I think that's a great place to end it. So, guys, Brittany, Tommy, once again, thank you guys. We'll see you guys next week for another topic, and we'll scare you later. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.